A number of years ago, I was interim minister at a congregation called in Costa Mesa, California, south of Long Beach and north of LA. And when I was at this congregation, they sold their building that had a peak view, as it's called in California, of the ocean. And they bought or tried to buy property that was inland about 5 miles, and it was a very complicated thing. But in the transition, it was filled with unknowns. And I remember we were never at any moment absolutely certain that their building would be sold and that we would be able to buy this new building. But the owners allowed us to use the new building. And as we were moving into that building, not knowing if we were going to stay there or not, every Sunday we would sing that song. Every Sunday. I know we don't know how, we don't know when, but we know we're going to get there. And at one time, they literally didn't know if they were going to be able to close this deal, which involved selling one property and buying the other. And it was kind of suspended up in the air. But even in the face of that, they decided that they were going to move forward because they knew they could sell the building. They weren't sure they could acquire the property they had chosen. And so that was real faith. It was a real stepping into the unknown. So this song that they sang really cut deeply to their hearts. I'd like to talk about the future today because you are on a course. You have been on a course for some time. And it is a wonderfully exciting time to be a part of this congregation. So if you're a visitor, join the congregation and join a very exciting future that you are marching into. But I'd like, before I touch on the future, I'd like to touch on the past, because the past determines the present and to some extent the future. And the theme of the last 2 years is dealing constructively with change, because you had a ministry here that was present for at least 8 years, and it's always traumatic when a minister steps away into a new adventure and a congregation gets used to that void and the unknown of what they'll face. And so it was with this congregation. And at the same time, or almost about the same time, you got hit by COVID. And you had to deal with all the changes and permutations in the life of this congregation that required. So you had change to deal with. How did you deal with it? Well, you've dealt with it in a spectacular way because you've done things that help construct your future and assure success for the future as you go into it. The congregation created a new covenant, refreshed the old one, and created a new covenant, and now you begin to integrate it into the life of the congregation. It was read earlier. And it slowly but surely is becoming intertwined in the being and the life of this congregation. One of the first things I said to you when I came here as the interim minister is I said, in my experience with TID congregations, the most alive and healthy congregations I've ever experienced are those that have a covenant and that take it seriously from the top down or throughout. So having a covenant is an extraordinarily important thing because it gives you a sense that when you enter this space, you're entering a kind of sacred space where you've taken on the commitment to treat one another in a particular way. You're not just a random set of strangers or old acquaintances. You are defining how you will be with one another so you can shape it and form it in a manner that will bring out your very best selves as much as possible. So that's wonderful. You created a new governance system. Now that is a boring subject, but it is, and has been, and shall be for the next year or so an extraordinary achievement, because you had leadership emerge within this congregation that basically helped you rewrite how you will function as an organization. And the bottom line to that is it will empower people. It will empower you to be as fully as you can the wonderful source of light and love and compassion in the larger community and right here. You increased your building reserves for the building and the property. Now, this is truly a boring subject, and it was like pulling teeth to make it happen, but it gave you a great degree of security, financial security, as you approach the future. You elevated Karen to the role of Director of Congregational Life. That was a great achievement, acknowledging her for what she is and does and can do. And of course, we all adapted to COVID, which was extraordinarily difficult. And the tech team over here, please thank them as often as you can for helping us navigate that. Last but not least, you put into place a stellar and absolutely wonderful search committee led by Geraldine. This will ensure, this is so important because it will ensure that you take full advantage of the opportunities for ministers that will come your way. Because make no mistake, there are going to be 15 or 16 people who want to be your next settled minister, who will desire that very strongly. And to have a committee that can work through all the discernment of which one is best for this congregation is in the fantastic hands of Geraldine and her committee. So we are in a safe place as we go forward. Now, one of the things that I want to impress upon the congregation is that all of these things I've talked about happened because of the development and the emergence of leadership, not me. I'm sort of like a coach or a cheerleader. I'm out there, on the sidelines saying, hey, do this or do that, but I'm not playing the game. I'm not on the field. And for all of these things to happen, there had to emerge leadership within your ranks to lead. And what do I mean by leadership? Well, I have a very particular understanding of that. It is the capacity to create change, leading to a higher level of harmonious functioning in a way that is sustainable. You can create change, but then the change can backfire. But to create change that is sustainable, that holds, that moves forward with the group is a great achievement. And I won't get into naming all those leaders as I have in other places, because I will surely leave somebody out. But that's a wonderful thing that you have people in your congregation who are willing and able and capable of leading you forward. Along the way, as I explored this path with you, it became obvious that you have certain very important strengths that are precious. One of them is pastoral care to members. I have never seen a congregation that does pastoral care to its members better than this congregation. And never. And it's not because you are just super compassionate compared to other UU congregations. It's because you've got that great compassion for others, but you're organized. You're organized. You have a care committee that's very organized. You have the staff that's involved. You have the lay ministers group that helps. And you have a lot of other people who are doing stuff spontaneously to help others. So that is a fantastic thing. Also, you have a culture of can-do. You jump on things if you think there's something that needs to be done in your culture. Traditionally, you've said, by golly, we can do it. Let's do it. Let's try. That's part of the leadership going way back in the past of this congregation. That's very important. You have a deep commitment of members to this congregation. People understand and know how precious this place is. You have many capable leaders, and you have a very experienced staff, which is a wonderful thing in and of itself. Now, let's talk about the future for a moment. I've talked enough about the past, but the past is that foundation that allows us to go forward with strength and certainty. Well, what is this year shaping up to be? Well, the search process will definitely be foremost and very important, but a lot of that search process is going to be done in a relatively confidential manner by the search committee. And it's important that they be protected to do their work. And Geraldine, I think you would agree with me about that. To let them do their work, they need independence and freedom. And that is very important. But we will, from time to time, hear about their work. And not least is, I think, around October the 11th, Reverend Keith Crone, who is the very head of the transition department of the UUA, will be here to make some presentations and to talk to the search committee. And his presence is an invaluable point of inflection for the search process. There are some things that we still need to look at, I think. Bear in mind that the 2 years I've been here, I have focused maniacally on internal matters, getting the systems of governance and functioning in the internal workings of the congregation going. But because of that and because of COVID, certain things were put aside that were very important that I never talked about, but I'd like to talk about now. One thing is that, and this is true for UU congregations nationally, but it is true for this congregation as well. We must think more aggressively and strategically about letting our light shine in the larger community. We need to get out there. You know, I'm old enough where I've seen this whole process unfold. UUs, through decades of how they thought, were like a private club that said to themselves, if you can find us, we welcome you. But if you can't, well, we're sorry. Now, and you see this behavior manifesting itself in various ways. Like we have a sign out here, a sign of the fellowship. But it broadcasts, we are here. But if you look below, there's a place where the service times is mentioned. But it's covered up with flowers, so you can't see it. So it's like, we'll tell you we're here, we're just not telling you when we meet. And so, you know what I'm saying? I've been to so many UU congregations all over the country, and many of them are down a long road somewhere in the woods, somewhat similar to this one. And it's part of a whole mindset. And if you go back 50 or 40 years, 60 years, as our movement was developing, we were very counterculture. We were very different vis-a-vis the larger culture. But those days are over. The culture is now waiting for a religious group like ourselves. We meet the moment of culture and society, and so we need to make that connection. Many UU congregations can be compared to an opera singer who has a fantastic voice and could sing rather in opera houses all over the world, but instead chooses to sing only in his home with his family and friends. That's kind of the way we are like. So the congregation needs to let itself be known. How do we do that? Well, one way is that we as a religious group need to explicitly make connections with every nonprofit, every form of any kind of group in this city that has similar values, and there are many of them. And we need to make ourselves known to those people. And we need to aggressively carve out places in the public space where we can declare who and what we stand for. The days of needing to or being worried about exposing ourselves to the larger culture are over. Another way, is a simple way, is that every month this congregation honors an organization by splitting the plate with them. And they're all magnificent organizations. We need to have the CEO or the leaders of those organizations coming here and thanking us face to face for what we are doing. We need to have the chairpersons of their board or representatives of their board here talking to us. We need to be able to be in their newsletters, acknowledged in their newsletters. We need to let our light shine. There is no downside to being more aggressively about projecting ourselves in the world. One of the problems is that we are by and large an introverted, a group of introverts. And so we need to find the extroverts among us and empower them and say, you're our extrovert brigade. Go out there. But we need to find ways creatively to project ourselves in the larger world. And I'm about to use a bad word when I talk about this next thing we need to do, which is linked to the first thing, which is, and the bad word is evangelism. Forgive me for using that. Forgive me for using that. Now, we need, evangelism rightly has a bad name, right? So, for example, this week, 2 men showed up at my front door. Ties. I looked through the window. There were 2 men across the street. So Alfie says, go out there and talk to those people. And so I go out there, and they're pretty slick. They're really kind of advanced at this. They begin to chat with me in a very nice way and compliment the bamboo. I don't know why they like bamboo so much, the bamboo that's around the front of my house. And so we chit-chat a little bit, and then the guy, launching into his speech, he doesn't talk to me directly. He gets out a little computer pad, like an iPad. He holds it in front of me, and it's 2 cartoon characters, and one of them is saying to the other, do you believe you can be happy forever? I beat him to the draw. I said, I think the answer to this question is yes. I'm still working on some of the details of the answer. Get back with me in a year and I'll have it all figured out. But then we chit-chatted, and it was a very kind exchange because I felt bad for these people in a way. But anyway, evidently I was too nice because the next day they showed up at our house again. And I wasn't there. Alfie's was, and she just ignored them and they went away. So, but that's a story yet to be developed. So, we don't want to do that. I mean, what would we do? Would we hand out pamphlets with a big question mark on it, or our 7 principles? I don't know. But we can be more open about who we are and what we stand for, and not shy telling people. As I look at our 7 principles, soon to be 8, but as I look at our present 7 principles, wow, what a thing to be proud of. Especially now in society as we see the threats to democracy itself. We are the most democratic religious institution in America. Think about it. Our foundation is a reflection. The beginning principles of our religious movement reflected the democratic paradigm that was developed by the founders. So the point I'm trying to make is, now is the time for us to come out of the closet and say, this is who we are, this is what we stand for, this is what is important. Who could deny that? Who could deny our 7 principles just as the beginning? We need to let our visitors know that we want them and that we need them. I remember times where, going back through the years, where we were so delicate with visitors because of this paranoia about seeming to behave anyway like those evangelistic religions out there. And it was almost as though somebody who was interested in our congregation would have to find the book, grab the book and sign it, force us to admit that they're a member. We need to tell, and as I say to all of you visitors today, we need you. We literally need you to survive. We need you to grow and develop. We need you to develop our full self. Let that be unambiguous. We need you. And so we need to make that clear to people. We need to project into the world that what we offer is important. We promote individual liberty, independent thinking, the democratic process, the reverence towards science, and the reverence towards community, social action, and children as a part of what we do. Who can not say that that is an important, vital force for the world right now? Who can deny that? Why would we be shy about that? We fit the temper of the times. We also need to grow in our understanding, and I speak principally to our leaders, about how our new governance system empowers people. Because let me tell you, folks, if there's somebody in this congregation who has a passion to do something, they can be immediately empowered to do that, provided they have 2 or 3 people that'll help them. Think of the possibilities. And for committees or teams that are in deep retirement, we can help them transition into something new and different. Well, this year in my sermons, I'm going to do a bit of a shift. I am going to, number one, experiment a little bit more, be more experimental with the services. For example, in October, I want to try to do a blessing of the animal service. Well, is that okay with you all? Where you bring, and we've got this new patio out here, or terrace, so we can fix it up if we can just talk the tech team into setting it up. But we'll see how that works. But that's something different to sort of acclimate you to the fact that you're moving into a time where you have a new settled minister, and that person is going to bring some new paradigms about how to do worship service. And so we need to sort of get ourselves ready for that. I am going to talk this year fairly frequently in my sermons about wisdom traditions. I haven't done that the whole time I was here, but it's a fascinating fact of history that there are people throughout history, throughout human history, recorded human history, who have said and taught some incredible things, some wonderful things that address the problems of the human condition. Some of the people we know well, such as Buddha, and many other teachers. But the human condition has changed in a lot of ways. But in some ways, the human condition hasn't changed. because we all deal with death and dying. We all deal with the need to know what is the moral thing to do. We all need to know how to navigate our relationships, how to do so in a loving way, how to forgive people who hurt us, and how to love people fully who deserve our attention. So there's things about the human condition that do not change, and these wisdom teachers throughout the ages are ones that help address that. And you know they're important if their teachings last more than a couple of centuries, right? You know that it addresses something deep in the human condition if it has longevity as a message. So that's kind of what I'll be focusing on in the sermons throughout the year. I am teaching a series of classes on relationships. And one of the reasons I'm doing that is that I want to strengthen this project of you as a congregation valuing your covenant. And there is a covenant committee that'll help people recognize this and recognize the importance of covenant that will be developing. But I want to, in this last year with you, I want to give you a sense of everything I've ever learned about relationships based on a lot of material. And so I hope to engage as many people as possible in that. We have a first class in September the 12th and 13th. About 40 people have signed up for that, which was a good response. And so I will be reintroducing those original two, as well as continuing on with that first group and doing a series, hopefully, of three classes, three sets of 2 classes each. But you'll read about that. But be aware that I really would like for people to be a part of that, because it's a part of the whole plan of strengthening the culture here in this congregation. We are living in what is called a liminal time, a time of in between. The pandemic and the political chaos that we have seen over the last 2 years, not to mention ever-growing concern about our ecological situation, not to mention other things, have upended our lives, have forced us to think, what is next? What do we learn from this? Where do we go with what we have learned? The ways in which people do religious community is changing. For example, one thing we see, one pattern we see in UU congregations across the country is that young families with children, especially where the parents were both working jobs during the week and doing so on Zoom, that group of people just kind of disappeared. We need to get them back in to the best of our ability. We need to get everyone in that we can possibly get in. The pandemic affected us. It changed our lives. Some of us lost loved ones. Some of us know people who have long COVID. It changed us. And it changed us as amid all these other things that were happening. We are in an in-between time. The new patterns of how to be religious community are emerging. On many levels, we are reimagining what that will mean. And you, each of you, old-time members, new people, and everybody in between, you are a part of that. Think of that. You are the author of this new form of community that is developing. It is time, my friends, to show up and to be part of it all. And I look forward to seeing you doing so.